Hello. This is the poem Zarephath, and it was written for the Zarephath Ministries in Southern California, of which my wife and I happened to attend one time back in 2013. And so I wrote it for them and I sent it to them, and hopefully it blesses others, and I hope it will bless you today. It was written by Chris Widmer and is based on 1 Kings 16 and 17. Once upon a time, back in the Bible days, a man who is a Tishbite perceived prophetic rays. So he goes and tells King Ahab, "Sire, Baal is a prop, and to prove it, God will close the sky. There will not be a drop of moist precipitation, no fog, no mist, no sleet. Until I shall return, no puddles in the street. The Lord of all creation will prevent all dew and drizzle to prove to all of Israel this Baal thing is a fizzle." His sermon, short, now ended. He heads towards the door. Though it had rained that morning, there wouldn't be no more. That night at Ahab's briefing, the weather girl said, "Well, our Doppler thingy's working, but I just can't say how our forecast has so quickly changed from rain to an offshore flow. If you ask me, will it rain this week, I would have to just say no. And the forecast is now calling for just hot winds mixed with dust. I'm starting to think this Baal thing just might be a bust." But Ahab clenches teeth and fists and summons Jezebel to make her prophets sacrifice and her servants check the well. Entrails are consulted and a cistern sounding taken. "It's down 10 feet, Your Majesty." The water dude was shaken. In the 3 full days that follow, their well dried quickly up, and in the morn they drew a gallon, and by nightfall just a cup. Yes, this stubborn king and queen blame that leathery prophet guy when that night they are thirsty 'cause their royal well is dry. Until the king would pray to God and find true faith again, the prophet is off praying that God would hold the rain. He finds a place of refuge up in the mountains high, where the streams there gurgle longer and ravens ply the sky. Those big black birds bring donuts, turnovers and scones, filet mignon and lamb chops and chicken without bones. And one night with his supper, he'll never forget that day, one raven even brought a scoop of mango fruit sorbet. He looks up to the heavens and thanks God for his grace. Elijah takes his shoes off, for he's in a holy place. "God of my forefathers, I pray for a great revival. Our leader worships Baal and Asherah as your rival. Let him learn his idols do not bring the fields to fruit, and let him learn that his own horn is nothing he should toot. God save the king and queen. Help them be devout, and use whatever thing you will. Bless them with this drought." We do not know how long he stays there or exactly where he hid. We do not know exactly what the prophet daily did, but we do know he prays for Ahab and for the nation to be pained, and we know that Yahweh answered, for it never, ever rained. And he too is affected. His hidden creek quit too. The ravens bring him crusty crusts and then nothing more to chew. There is nothing more to eat and nothing for a bath. And that was now the only place to go, and that was Zarephath. Elijah pulls his belt a notch. At least he's still alive. The drought is causing famine. His cinchings have numbered 5. He packs his crusts and canteen and trudges up the draw. He listens for a moment, but he doesn't hear one caw. And then comes an impression, the kind the Spirit makes. Go there. Find a widow. Eat the bread she bakes. The famine will continue until Ahab does the math. So go now and be a blessing to the town of Zarephath. He marches the lonely miles beyond Israeli borders, God's man on a godly mission, following heaven's orders. He seeks his fellow travelers for directions on his quest. Just keep on marching north. Don't veer off east or west. He finally finds the region at the end of a plodding session. And once again, his spirit is gripped by a strong impression. Go left. And now right. Go farther. Well, he's now almost out of town. And that's when he sees a woman in a tattered, all-black gown. She faces him bent over. Her hands are full of twigs. Her yard completely empty. No sheep, no goats, no pigs. Those creatures have been eaten as mutton, steaks, or bacon, and now it seems there's nothing left for any meal making. And what is that? Why, some movement at the entry of the house. It's a little boy, half naked. Why, he's barely skin and bone. A thought booms in his psyche. This place is the one. Ask her for a meal first, and then tell her to feed her son. He thought, oh God, are you kidding me? Ask her for a bite to eat? Can't you see they're starving? A meal would be quite the feat. If they had a morsel, they've hardly the strength to chew it. The impression throbbed the louder. I've spoken, prophet, do it. Hello? May I have a moment? No, I'm not selling brushes. I'm not selling timeshares, candy bars, or slushes. I'm not collecting funds to help a prostitute. I know this will sound crazy since I see you're destitute, but could I have some water? I suffer from great thirst. See, Yahweh already told me that your well here is cursed. You see, just that very morning, she had found her cistern dry. She had just one jar of water left, and then she and her son would die. That morning, she had knelt to Baal. Please come to my aid. I'm down to my last flour, and I have nothing to barter or trade. But it was Yahweh who would give her answer. For he'd been listening too. And that's why Elijah was there right now. Behold, what the real God can do. She turns to go fetch his water. But the prophet speaks yet more. He sees her son clutch his belly as he stands there in the door. And would you make a loaf for me? I haven't eaten, ma'am. You needn't worry about butter or jelly or any jam. Just a small one would be fine. I know this request is wild, but then go fix one for yourself and to feed your hungry child. She turns and drops her gathered wood. Her blood begins to boil. As sure as your God lives, I say, I've just a little oil and I've just a little flour. Our rations run out today. We plan to eat and die, good sir. So be on your way. These sticks, she motions to the ground, will be my final fire. So you don't mind, dear drifter, if I'm a meal denier. But the prophet looks her in the eye. God says that you should feed me. His promise, ma'am, is you'll not starve. I'm here because you need me. After I have eaten, and then you can make some bread for yourself, for the God I serve will put more flour and oil upon your shelf. And this will happen every day that we will eat together. This will happen every day until there's rainy weather. And the well, yes, the well, your well will today provide our water, for our Lord God considers you to be his much-loved daughter. A miracle occurred just then. And I'm not talking about the gluten in her container. An act of total faith and trust. It now seems a no-brainer. She walks away and stirs a dough, just as the prophet said, and serves him her precious water and a biscuit blob of bread. And then she looks inside her canister to see if it is true. She gasps. There's more oil. And there's more flour, too. She makes a loaf for her little lad. She laughs as he chews it down. Hers is the only household that has calories in that town. And so lastly, she makes herself one too, in the shape of a tea-time scone. She relishes it in silent praise to the true God on his throne. And for days and days to come, it happened every meal. It was only bread and water, not leg of lamb or veal. Watch. Her little boy gets plumper, and that makes a mama happy. And her flesh, too, fills out again. Her arms had gotten flappy. The jar of meal and the jar of oil never is seen to be void. And now, though she is still a widow, she's suddenly self-employed. Time went by like it always does. One day her son takes ill. She does what she can to help him, as every mother will, but a physician can't be summoned to come to his bedside on account of the drought and the famine. All the doctors in town have died. Finally, the boy stops breathing. His skin turns an ashen gray. His mom speaks to Elijah. Yes, she now will have a say. I'm glad you came here months ago, so we have food to eat. Having bread and water has really been some feat. But now, oh, now my son is dead. I can hardly take it in. Did you come to remind me of my former life of sin? Oh, yes, I am a widow woman. His father was worked to death, and now our little boy lies cold without a pulse or breath. See, we had to get married, for we had fornicated. It became quite obvious when I had been impregnated. We had the choice of marriage or to spend some time in prison, and it seemed as like forever when my papa did his quizzing. My papa got his throwing spear and he marched me down the aisle. He held it on his shoulder and he didn't ever smile. We said I do, and that was that, and soon all was forgotten. And that's the woeful tale of how this child was forgotten. So tell me, Mr. Prophet, did your God kill my son? Is this his heavenly judgment on my prenuptial fun? If it is, then won't you leave us? I've a little grave to dig. I know that your God makes flour, but I don't think he's this big. Elijah stands there, weeping in the face of her raw grief. He knows it wasn't Yahweh, but it was the serpent thief. He asks her, "Is there any more?" She shakes her head. "I'm done." And that's when he softly says to her, "Give me, please, your son." He takes him from her arms, and he climbs a flight of stairs that take him to an upper room with a cot and a couple chairs. He lays the lifeless body on his bed in the traditional way, and then he stretches his body on the corpse. That's the strangest way to pray. 3 times he calls out to the Lord, "Oh Lord, just tell me why. Why have you blessed her pantry and allowed her son to die? Oh Lord, our Lord, let life return. Let him take another breath." That's coming pretty cold, to the very face of death. Then, wonder of all wonders, the child takes an inhale. His skin gets pigmentation, which had just been ghastly pale. His eyes, they open brightly. The room has a holy calm. And then in his childish lisping, he says, I want my mom." Elijah picks him up and carries him from the room down to where his mother is weeping in her gloom. She's curled up tight and fetal in the corner of her rug until she feels 2 little arms giving her a hug. Elijah hugs her too. "Behold, your son's alive. Evil tried to take him down, but look, he did survive. The God I serve is mighty. He can do the biggest thing. She wipes her tears and smiles, and then she starts to sing. He can do anything. Nobody like the Lord and Master. He can do anything. Nobody like the Lord. And now for the rest of her story. The prophet left. It rained. The oil and the flour event never got fully explained. She and her son kept eating that until her garden grew and it produced a whopper crop, and then she made some stew. Is there a place where the oil and the flour never, ever run out? Yes, this tale is true, my friend. Of that, there is no doubt. And if you don't believe it, I know a little path. It starts from right wherever you are, and it ends in Zarephath.